This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Well, welcome to the Extra Point Podcast. My name is Anna, and I'm the youth pastor here at Southridge Church. Joining today is Cheryl, our Next Steps in Discipleship pastor, and we're really excited to discuss a new sermon in our series, Talking to Jesus. And this sermon is When God Says No. It's not always pleasant to hear no when we're asking for things, specifically in prayer. We're talking to God, and He says no to our requests or no to some of the things that we're looking for. So I just kind of want to open just from the top, pop the lid off of this whole thing and say, when God says no, is it a result of our sin? Is it good for us? Maybe both? Like, what does this look like?
Yeah, well, for that answer, I can't give a statement that would cover everybody, obviously, because there are things that is unique to everyone and unique to every situation and prayer that is asked. But I would say that sometimes certain things happen, and it's not necessarily, I don't think it's a result of your specific sin, but I think there are things that happen in life that are just a result of original sin and the fall of creation. When the world became broken, things in life became broken. And so like cancer, death, all those things were not in God's original plan.
Right.
But because of the fall, they are now a part of our life. And so just because somebody has cancer and they're not healed, it's not because they were sinful or in some way. A story that comes to mind that I don't think Pastor Scott shared on Sunday was the blind man who Jesus healed. And he's brought before, the religious people, and they're like, why were you blind? Was it because of your sin, or was it because of your parents' sin? And it's like, no, it wasn't because of any of those things.
Yeah.
It was just a part of what happened in his life. And so, I think that sometimes you can get caught up in that and think, well, God's punishing me. Right. But God's not that way. And I understand that there can be a lot of people who might think that, because if they read the Old Testament in the wrong view or lens of God, it can seem like God is punishing people because of their sin. They went to war with the Canaanites and things because they were wicked and all of this stuff. And so it can seem like that, oh, well, that's who God is. He punishes people because they're sin.
Yeah.
But we know because of Jesus, Jesus came to take that punishment for us once and for all. And it's not a blanket. Like when you sin, there are consequences from your sin.
Yeah.
There's forgiveness, but it might not save you from consequences.
Yeah. Which is different from just the blanketed brokenness.
Yes.
That is over humanity.
Yes.
Currently.
Yeah.
This is consequences of actual decisions made.
Yes. Yeah. Like my grandmother used to always say, do whatever you want as long as you're willing to pay the consequences.
Oh my gosh.
That was her parenting style, for her kids, was do whatever you want as long as you're willing to pay the consequences. Yeah. And so I try to teach this to my kids sometimes. It's like, if you want to do this, it's something really silly, but it was one day after church, and they're hungry because we're here later than everybody else.
Yeah.
And I told them they could choose to have a snack here, but they would not get what we were doing later. And they decided, I really want this now. And so they did that, and then they missed out on the thing later. And I said, well, I told you guys you had a choice, and I was okay either way.
Right.
You were the one that was going to have to be willing to pay that price. And two of them chose the one, to eat here, and the other chose to wait. And they were so upset because the other got the ice cream or whatever it was later, and they had to miss out. And it was one of those that sometimes though there is grace, and you can say, hey, you don't deserve this, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Yeah. Because I think you've learned and whatever. And so there is that dynamic of original fall, but there is that dynamic of if you do something, there will be forgiveness. So you're not like punished to death for it or whatever, but there might be a consequence that still happens that you still have to deal with.
Yeah.
Is it good for us? The no, oftentimes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I know that I prayed for boyfriends to be whatever, like when I was younger. I'm so glad that was not the case. Like, I am, it's one of those things that it's like, what's the country song? Like, I thank God for unanswered prayers.
Oh,
like,
yes.
Or whatever. I thank God for
amazing.
no prayers. Like, answers to, like, no to some prayers.
Yeah.
Because it's like, he obviously knows what's best for us.
Yeah.
And I think that it's like, I love that Pastor Scott brought out the whole parenting aspect from the beginning.
Yes.
Because I think if we can remember, like, or think about, okay, he wants what's best for us because he loves us and cares for us as his children, then even though we may not get it, we may not be able to understand it or explain it, he has our best interest in mind.
Yeah.
And I think about the same thing, like, with my husband, in an absence of understanding or knowledge for a decision that's made or something that was done, I'm still going to assume the best because I know that he loves me and has my best interest in mind.
Yeah.
And so, like, with those same lenses, you have to think about it with God.
Well, I think that if we think about it like that, the people that we know and love and that love us, like, they're still quite imperfect. Quite imperfect.
Yes.
But we do trust that they have the best interest for us. So when they're saying no to something, either for us or to us, how much more is God's decision making for us? Like, how much more when he loves us perfectly and knows us perfectly and knows our future perfectly. Like, he has the most clear vision of who we are and what is best for us than there is a deeper level and opportunity to trust him and let our faith grow in those no moments.
Yeah.
I think I agree that putting it in the perspective of a family dynamic or a parent dynamic, because even the most perfect parents that we can think of, maybe they're not even our own, could be our friends or our cousins or whoever, like, even those, God is way beyond that. Like, he's way more perfect than that.
And I get it. It's hard to, like, have that lens if you didn't have good parents growing up, or, maybe they said no to things that, like, for instance, my parents were not the greatest. And I remember, like, I got in trouble for, I got grounded for 2 weeks for switching shifts to be able to go to church.
Yeah.
But they were lost. They didn't know God.
Yeah.
And so, like,
it looked like an irresponsible choice.
They
or
were
something.
trying to teach me the discipline and responsibility of having a job and sticking with your commitment for a schedule. But it was like, what? I'm trying to do a good thing here. And I remember, like, really struggling with that until I realized, like, well, they're in their mind, like, they're lost, so they don't understand the putting God first thing that I do. And also, that is a good lesson that does need taught.
Yep.
Maybe I just, like, I am a Christian and a believer, so if my kid made that decision, it would be different. But through that lens, it was tough to understand as a teen. But so I get, like, it can be really hard to feel like, well, my parents were terrible. Like, I didn't have that. But I think looking at people who might not be your own, because even growing up, I saw really good parents. Yeah. And I had that modeled not through my parents, but through other people's parents. So.
Yeah. Well, I think I enjoyed discussing it in the sense of, like, the consequences and those things. There were 3 additional points made in this when God says no teaching: character, calling, and care. Any of those you want to dig deeper in? We can kind of get some discoveries out. Yeah.
Well, I think, like, the character side, and I think you even had this written down, was Pastor Scott made the statement, don't ask God to change his character when you're not willing to change yours. I think that often we forget in the midst of whatever we're going through or whatever we're dealing with, whatever, struggle we have in our anger, we sometimes say things or ask for things that is so far against who God is that we don't realize what we're really asking.
Yeah.
And I think we have to have an understanding of who God is. But honestly, in this day and age, I don't know that a lot of people have been taught really well, like who God is and his character.
Yeah.
And like the Wesleyan holiness movement that we're a part of would say that God is holy love, like holy, HOLY love.
Yeah.
Like, so because he is holy love, like anything that goes against that, like would not be a part of his character. And so
it would be
underneath
an automatic
that,
no.
underneath that holy love, like of course kindness is in there and generous is in there and loving and gracious and like all those things are in there because that's part of who he is.
Yeah.
But like within that, they would say like God's grace, like within his grace, like he will never give up on us. So he's going to continue to be there for us. Like even when we fail, even when we, whatever, his love never gives out on us.
Yeah.
Like
fails us.
Right. It never
falls short.
It never fails. It never, like there's no resource that runs dry as far as that. There's no cap to the limit of his love, but he'll never give in to us either. Yeah. And so it's understanding like in our, we might want God to change his view of a certain sin. Yeah. Because we want to stay and live in that. Like, God, why is it wrong for me to live with this person who I love and have kids with and like whatever and not be married to them? Like in our minds, we're married or biblically we're married.
It almost seems unloving
like
to think that it could be different.
Yeah.
Like in those moments you're going, seems like there's a lot of love in this house. Yeah. There's a lot of love in this relationship. And if God's against it, how is that loving? Yeah. And to look into, I didn't recognize the depth of God's character. And when we do uncover that, then we go, okay, I have to realign. Yeah. And like God as holy love, like he defines what love is. Right. Not us. Yeah. And not our view. And so like we have to see like that's why when we talk about marriage, like we go by his definition. Yeah. We go by, because he's the one who created it, like not us. And so within character, there's so much within there that I don't know that we fully understand or comprehend. And if you haven't, because we gain our theology based on a lot of what's taught to us and a lot of our experiences and those types of things. And if you haven't gone to schooling for it or that type of stuff, you maybe don't know. Like, because I've been to a lot of churches in my life. This is the probably longest I've been at a church and within a movement. Yeah. In my entire life. Yeah. And I've been here on staff for 12 years, but I attended a few years before that. Yeah. But before adulthood, I've been to Baptist churches. I've been to Catholic churches. I've been to a different Church of God movement. I have been to Methodist churches. Like I've been I've been around in the church world, and you get taught something very different at each of those places. And so if you don't understand God's character, that's hard to understand fully. Yeah. That statement. Yeah. Within those dynamics of prayer. Yeah. But I think as far as like, oftentimes God wants to build your character is a big deal. I'm listening to a book by Jenny Allen called Restless right now, and it's a lot about calling and that type of stuff. And she was sharing about how the things that we go through in life build up something within us for what he has purpose for us later. So I can look at, the abuse and the things that I experienced as a child and understand that all of that, while it's terrible, and I don't believe God wanted any of that to happen. And you probably prayed for things and heard nothing or no. Yeah. Through that time.
But like now I can see that God is using that to help speak into other people's lives and for a purpose. Like he's giving me purpose from all that pain and that experience that I had. And so even though like some of that went on for years, like I know that he was still with me within it all, and that he's using it. He's not allowing it to, like, he didn't allow it to happen and then just be like, sorry that happened, like what some of us would be like, sorry that happened. No, right. He's given me a passion, even if I wasn't working at a church, I believe that it would still be being used in the world.
Yeah.
Because like I wanted to work with kids in some way so that I could help recognize those things within kids, or be there for kids when that happens, or any of that stuff. And so I believe that those things, even the worst,
into that calling aspect of can totally be a part of calling development. And I see that in you as a friend and as someone who's worked with you in the past years. Like, what has happened, the no's in your life have developed a passionate desire. And I think that similar in my story, there are things where I was already passionate about things before I ever stepped into ministry, because I knew I had a calling on my life, and it came from some kind of disappointed moments. And God absolutely uses those things.
Yeah. Like I think of when I had my miscarriage, like our miscarriage story is a little different. We went to the doctor, and the doctor told us, like, most of the times when he sees this in the ultrasound, it doesn't progress. He said, but there's a chance that you're just not as far along as we think you are. And next week you might come back and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
I held on to that chance for that week. I mean, I prayed. I remember being mad at my husband praying in the car, like, not our will, but your will be done. Yeah. I remember being mad at him because I was like, how dare you pray that? No, how would his will not be for this baby to survive? And it ended up being a no. We went back the next week. He saw some bleeding. I was beginning miscarriage signs and all of that. And it ended up being a no. But through that, I ended up meeting all kinds of other women who've gone through it. I've been able to be there for other women who've gone through it in an understanding way. It's part of that like whole, we comfort those because God comforted us.
Yes.
Like, and that's part of our calling as people. The things that we go through, those no's that you get in those times are meant, like, God can use that for your good and the good of others and for his glory in the process.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think that the fourth point that's made is the care aspect of a no. I think that's wrapped and entangled in all of this. Like, because God so deeply cares for us, the no might mean no. It might mean not yet, but it always means he loves you. He's caring for you. He's doing things to look out for you.
Yeah. And I think even within my miscarriage story, this is like something that a lot of people don't know about, but it was probably a month or so after that, maybe less than a month. I don't know. But I had a place in my C-section incision open up like pretty badly. It was gross. And it was, I won't tell all the details, but within that I thought, I'd have been a couple months along, or 4 months. I think I'd have been like 4 months along at that point, maybe. And I remember thinking, what would have happened and how bad would it have been had I stayed pregnant?
Yeah.
And like in that, it gave me a different peace.
Yeah.
For it all, because I thought, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea what this would be like had I been stretching further to accommodate a baby. Like, and I don't know. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of things that, like, most of it, we probably don't get those glimpses like what I did or those moments. Yeah. I think that the care is probably the harder one to understand.
I agree.
Because he is protecting us from something that we can't see yet.
Yes.
And that we aren't going to see. If he protects us from it, we probably don't see it. And so I think that's the hardest one probably to understand. Yeah. Because there's so much unseen within it. But I think of things like he shared the story of Paul trying to go into Asia Minor and not being allowed in. I always have looked at that and thought he probably spared Paul's life in some way. Like, who knows? Because, I mean, it wasn't an easy thing that he was doing. Like, the early missionaries, him and others, like, they faced a lot of hardship, a lot of persecutions, and we don't know what would have happened in that specific space that he was trying to enter in. Yeah. Like, if he'd entered in at that time in that place. Yeah. we don't know.
Right.
And I think that there's mystery around it because we're not meant to know, because it wasn't meant for us in the first place.
Yeah. I know for me, one of the things that in my prayer life, I actually would rather God say no than to say nothing.
Yeah.
Like, and so hearing a teaching like this, like reading through the notes, like looking at this and going, when God says no, like all these things, and I just, in my own prayer life, this may seem like totally cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and I'm okay with it. I've asked God, just say no. Please don't say nothing.
Yeah.
Because there's been times where, I've been trying to determine what job is the right job, what friendship is worth putting investment into, what house we're going to buy, whatever the thing is, and feeling like there's a decision that needs to be made. And when God's silent in those moments, in decision moments, I'm going, God, I actually want you to help us make this choice, and you're being silent, and I hear nothing. Going, God, would you at least just say no?
Yeah.
Because then there's a clearer path.
Yeah, I know. I think those are the really tough moments that require a lot of discernment and understanding, because I think that there are moments that either choice, like sometimes I think it's either choice might be okay.
Yeah, right.
Like either choice might ultimately get you to the next thing that he wants you to have, but it might be in a different way. I remember before we hired you, they had asked me about the youth pastor position, and I prayed about it. I didn't get a clear yes. I didn't get a clear no. I got a either way they decide is fine. Like that's what I felt. I was like, I don't think I can tell you yes or no. I don't and I remember being in that place, and I was like, I think that I'm supposed to trust you guys to make that decision.
Yeah.
Whatever you choose is fine. And I'm so glad that they brought you on, because I know very clearly that youth ministry is not my full-time calling. Like that's not my game. I am not with it with all the things.
You're still pretty cool.
Yeah, sometimes my kids might disagree, but like I've had to ask you, hey, what's this mean? My kids said this. What in the world does it mean? And they're still young.
Yeah.
But I know that was the right decision, and you have brought the youth ministry to a place that is so great. But like that was one of those moments that I felt like I wasn't getting an answer, like a clear answer. And it's like, how bizarre is it to go to somebody and be like, well, I don't know, but I think I'm supposed to let you decide whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that there are moments in our life too, that it's like, hey, this friendship, putting in effort, it's fine either way.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I think that he has developed stuff within us enough that he wants to like he trusts us to make that decision. Almost.
It reminds me, bringing it full circle back to the parenting aspect of like, I'm not parenting any kiddos directly in my home, but I have devoted my life to children. And there comes a time, even with the youth ministry here, we've got students who we're discipling, and we eventually go, I just trust you to make a decision.
Yeah.
Like I trust you to choose the right thing. And knowing that I'll be there if the right decision isn't made.
Right.
I'll scoop in and do what I can to help this situation. But I'm not just saying it, I actually mean it. I really just do believe that you're going to make the right choice.
Yeah.
And that probably is the lane that God is choosing in those moments when we're just going, God, I would just rather you say something. And he says, I trust you.
He's like, I've given you everything you need already. Yeah. Like it's one of those, at a certain point with parents, like you've got to just release the arrow.
Yeah.
And trust that it's going to hit the point that you have helped point them in.
Yeah.
Throughout all these 18 years.
Yeah.
But like, and I think that there's moments like that in our lives that it's like, you know what, if you take that job, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm still going to get you there.
Yeah.
Like I'm here for if things go south, I'm here and I do like, I mean, that's just my perspective on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be that, sometimes I think when we're not hearing things, there's also those moments where we're not getting in those quiet spaces to be able to hear from him. Yeah. But a lot of times I think like if you're doing all those things and you're still not hearing, it's probably he's developed all this in you. So it's like, look, this is your choice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that. And I think that a teaching like this, if we can take this to heart, understand, sometimes no is because of consequences. Sometimes no is because of character. We're not quite ready yet. Sometimes it's because of our calling. It's building something in us. And then sometimes it's literally protection, care being over us. There is hope in the no moments because I loved what you shared. God doesn't. It doesn't run out. There's no cap to him. He's there for us. He's coming alongside every moment of every day. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and he can be trusted. And so as we take shots in our prayer life, as we are trying new things here and wherever you're at, trust God in your prayer life. Still talk to him anyway, even if he's saying no. I know sometimes if someone tells me no, I don't want to go and talk to them again next time. Or sometimes we do the thing. Remember growing up, you've got kids, they probably do this now. One parent says no, they go to the other parent to look to see if they can get
all
thing.
The time. And I never, we had to learn what'd your dad say? Yes. What'd your mom say?
Yes. And I think that there's room for that too. When God says no, don't run to the other sources. Yes. Don't run to the person will say yes.
Yeah.
Just listen and respect what God says because he's got a reason for it. And he can be so trusted in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I
appreciate your sharing today. Yeah. Good chat. Thanks, Scott Behoff, for this fantastical message. And I hope that for you, listener, friend, as you subscribe, share with a friend, be hopeful when God says no, and keep talking to Jesus. We'll see you next time. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.